Welcome to another edition of RCE. Again, this is Brock Palin. You can find us online with our entire back catalog at rce-cast.com. Also, again, I have Jeff Squires from Cisco Systems and one of the authors of OpenMPI. Jeff, thanks again for your time.
Hey, Brock. Yeah, actually, it's been a good week here in OpenMPI. We just I know this will go out in a couple of days, but we just released OpenMPI 1.7.5 yesterday, so feeling pretty good today.
Also, I'm going to be hosting at the University of Michigan an Exceed workshop, which is open to anybody, Exceed Award, U of M student or not, for Open AAC. So those of you guys who are interested in programming GPUs, Xeon Phis, or just learning different pragmas, go ahead and check us out. It's April 1st, so it's kind of short notice, but go to exceed.org, and it's XSDE, to check it out. So that's the Open Accelerator workshop. Okay, so today our guests are Greg DeKoenigsberg, and Greg, you're gonna have to correct me on that.
Oh, yeah, Vic,
and Vic Iglesias, and they're here to talk about Eucalyptus. So, guys, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Vic, you want to start, or should I start?
My name is Vic Iglesias. I'm the Director of Quality and Release at Eucalyptus Systems. So I battle with myself to make sure the code is as good as it can be and right on time.
My name is Greg DeKoenigsberg. I'm the lead community for Eucalyptus. So I care about making sure we're building the right product and making sure the open source community is a part of that process.
So, our focus tends to be high-performance computing, scientific computing. So, a lot of our listeners probably haven't heard of Eucalyptus. Why don't you guys give us an idea of what is Eucalyptus?
What is Eucalyptus? Eucalyptus is an acronym. A lot of people don't know that, and it stands for Elastic Utility Computing Architecture, linking your programs to useful systems, blah, blah, mumble. But it's the Elastic Utility Computing Architecture. That's the key there. We're basically open source infrastructure as a service platform, and we do our very best to keep high fidelity with the Amazon Web Services API. So the idea is that if you want your own private cloud and you want it to be highly AWS compatible, we're the guys you come to.
Now, how did you guys get started? Because, clouds are all the rage these days, but you seem to have a very particular spin on doing private clouds, being AWS compatible and so on. So how did this start?
Oh, let's see. I guess it was a research project at UCSB in 2009, 8, Vic?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yep, that's right. 2008.
And it was a bunch of, it was a professor, Rich Wolski, at University of California, Santa Barbara, and his 7 Mary graduate students. And they wanted to set up their own version of the Amazon Web Services Cloud that they could use for their own research and their fellow researchers. So it sort of came out of needs in academia. And they turned around a version 1.0 pretty quickly that was a fair facsimile of some of the more basic functions of AWS. And then they realized, hey, there are a lot of people who might need this. And so it sort of turned into a company from there. And here we are still plugging.
Yep.
So around that idea, there was already, as you said, AWS already existed. So there was public offerings. What was their driver for wanting to build a private cloud, and why do you see people building private cloud now?
I think I could take this one. So, the university has a certain amount of hardware allocated for these projects, and they received that hardware and weren't given extra money to run stuff in the public cloud. So they had to utilize that as efficiently as possible. So I think that was a big driver for them writing the software. And we see similar ideas still, where a lot of companies and users have hardware laying around, and they can utilize those cores and that RAM and that storage that they have there to run a workload. Whether or not it's all of their workload is irrelevant. They get to leverage the things that they have purchased in the past in order to run their current workloads. And with Eucalyptus, you can use any tooling that you had existing for running against AWS, or if you want to pick up a new tool off the shelf that was written for AWS, you can point it at Eucalyptus and use it equally.
Do you see many customers coming to you guys, or people on the open source portion of the mailing list coming to you because they're concerned about putting that much of their infrastructure in the hands of a third party?
I haven't seen that concern. Usually, we have a lot of land and expand type of installations where people will start with a cloud in a box, which is, one single node, and run Eucalyptus on it, poke around with it, and then add additional compute nodes to it. So there is the possibility to scale this thing at pretty small and large scale.
Yeah, I don't think people, it's difficult to tell people's motivations, right? There are a bunch of possible motivations for private cloud. There's regulatory, for whatever reason they can't put their data into a public service. There's cost considerations. I don't think that, I think whenever you basically use any ISP or service provider of any kind, you are, quote unquote, putting your data in someone else's hands, right? So it's just a different kind of hosting model in that way. But I think that what people do want is the same kind of self-service that AWS provides. They want that inside of their own organizations more than anything else, right? There's a story I tell called the sysadmin's lament, right? The sysadmin sort of has this fiefdom, has control over these resources. If you want a system, you have to fill out a form. It goes through a process. The sysadmin basically puts up these kinds of walls to make sure that they can manage the complexity of making sure that everyone has compute power. Well, the sysadmin starts having a problem when the end user, rather than having to go to the sysadmin, can just take a credit card out of their wallet and go get a test bed server at AWS. And now that is reality, sysadmins in the real world are having to sort of scramble and say, oh, well, how do we compete with that? And so providing the same kind of self-service capability in a private cloud is something that's, organizations recognize that they need now, and there are, lots of ways to do it.
Okay, now part of the value add here, of course, like we said multiple times, is the compatibility with AWS. And you said a very interesting thing a moment ago, that you can take any tool that is created for AWS and just point it at Eucalyptus and be good to go. Tell me a little bit about how that works. Let's say I go buy this package and it says, oh, you can run your services out on AWS. Is there some central Eucalyptus server that I have on premises that I just change some server name in the package and I'm good to go?
Right. In essence, you just, what we do is we try to mirror the API and its semantics. So we use all the, SDKs and a lot of tools to verify that functionality. Once you have one of these tools, you would change, in most cases, it's presented as an endpoint, and you would change the endpoint URL to point at your Eucalyptus installation and start plugging away.
All right. Now, with the Eucalyptus infrastructure, does that allow me to overflow to AWS if I need to? Like, I have 100 resources and I have 150 requests. And so my 100 resources are full. Can it spill over those extra 50 into AWS? That kind of thing?
That is the dream called hybrid cloud. And I think that everyone is sprinting to get to that same place. You can do that today. There are some caveats. There are things that you have to do correctly, right? You need to make sure, for instance, that you've got images that are identical that are running in both places. And you have to make sure that you're using the same subset of services that Eucalyptus supports, right? AWS has 40 plus services out there, and we support 7 of them. We support EC2, S3, IAM,
ELB auto scaling.
Vic, can you rattle off the others?
Yeah, ELB auto scaling and CloudWatch are the last 3 that we added.
Right.
Hey, can you give us the one sentence description of